Well, a warm welcome to today's talk. It's Wednesday the 18th of May and the topic today is a disease which you may have heard about in the press, monkeypox. So what is this monkeypox about? Now I'm going to just go over the basis of this in the first few minutes, then you can decide if you want to watch the video. Just to put your mind at ease straight away, is this going to cause another pandemic? No, it's not. Is it a relevant and interesting disease? Yes, it is. Now, monkeypox is endemic in animal reservoirs in Nigeria and other areas of Africa like Congo. So here's a case of monkeypox from Nigeria, I believe this case is. And we can see these pustular spots that characterise monkeypox. Now, looking at this, you couldn't tell if this was monkeypox or smallpox, but thankfully we know that smallpox has been eradicated. There's three diseases that can look fairly similar. There's monkeypox, smallpox and cowpox, although most cases of cowpox now actually come from cats in the Western world at the moment. But this is monkeypox, the same type of virus. Monkeypox is not as deadly as smallpox, and it's less transmissible than smallpox. But as we say, the World Health Organization declared an end to smallpox in 1980, the last case being in 1977 from memory. Here we see these like pustular spots, these pussy spots that characterise monkeypox. And this has been in quite a few papers as well. But before that, let's just look at this. This is from the NHS site. So we see the raised rash that starts off, then it becomes a little bit pussy, then it becomes more pussy, then it kind of dries out and scabs, and then eventually the scabs fall off. But it can sometimes leave a bit of a scar. It can take a while to heal because of the infective process that's gone on in that site. So that's like the evolution of the condition. This has been in quite a few newspapers. The Guardian has been talking about this, for example. New York Times, monkeypox cases detected in Texas. Now, I just hasten to add that this New York Times article is from 2021. It's not current. So the UK stuff is bang up to date, May 2022. The States, as far as I know, there's no active cases at the moment. But Telegraph, for example, reporting that it's spreading in sexual networks. So if that's the case, that's a new component to the disease. So that's what this is about. If you want to stick around, we're going to go into some detail now. Now, this is caused by orthopox virus. Now, pox means pox actually means these pussy rashes. So when people talk about the pox, they're often talking about syphilis. Because syphilis, you get primary syphilis with a chancre at the site of infection. Then you get secondary syphilis where you can get this rash. And it's a pustular rash, so it's described as a pox. Not to be confused with the English vernacular term for gonorrhea, which is the clap, which you might hear talked about in certain circles. But pox just means this pustular rash. So that's where the term comes from. But as I say, cowpox, smallpox and monkeypox are the only diseases I've heard of at the moment. There are some others, but they're related to specific animals, and I don't think there's any around at the moment. And of course, smallpox isn't around. So we do get some cowpox, and now we've got some monkeypox. Now let's go straight to the definitive sources. There's been 7 cases in the UK, we believe, up to about 2 days ago. 4 of these cases have been local transmission. No travel links. So in other words, 3 of these cases did have travel links to Nigeria in this case, but the others are localised transmission from people that presumably picked it up in Nigeria. And there's very active contact tracing going on at the moment in the UK. All in London so far. This outbreak definitely came from Nigeria. The authorities seem quite happy with that. Usually mild and self-limiting illness, usually, thankfully, but it can affect all ages. Most people do recover in weeks, but the mortality, according to the NHS, at the moment is 1%. Now, that does sound low. The World Health Organization is probably near a 3.8% case fatality rate. So not insignificant if someone gets it, not insignificant at all. And it's a viral disease. and it's a DNA virus. Now, the other reason I'm happy that there's not going to be a pandemic of this, apart from the fact that people don't become symptomatic, don't become infectious until they are symptomatic. It's not like COVID, where people are transmissible, infectious before they're symptomatic. Here, people become infectious when they are symptomatic. But apart from that, this is a DNA virus. Now, COVID, of course, like influenza, is an RNA virus, a ribonucleic acid virus, as opposed to a deoxyribonucleic acid virus. And DNA, of course, is the same genetic material that we have ourselves. And the important thing about this is DNA viruses are able to correct genetic mistakes. So, like, if there's a mistake in the way that your genes work, the process of transcription and translation, if there's a mistake there, then the body can correct that. It can actually correct the way that the gene is incorrectly read in DNA, but with RNA it's not very good at that. But these DNA viruses can do that, and that means the mutation rate in DNA viruses is hundreds or even several thousand times slower than in RNA viruses. So we're not going to start seeing new variants. We're not going to have all this alpha, delta, whatever, Omicron situation, because it's such a slow mutator. Shouldn't be a problem. In fact, smallpox has been with us, well, as I say, officially declared eradicated in 1980 by the World Health Organization, but probably been afflicting humankind for 3,000 years that we know of, and probably a lot more. And of course, smallpox, this same group of viruses, was the disease that devastated the native population of the Americas, killing at least 300 million. But that's smallpox. This is monkeypox, but it is the same group of viruses. Now, monkeypox strains, there's different types of this virus. There's the milder West African strain, and there's the more severe Central African strain, the Congo strain. Now, the mortality with this one can be up to 10%, but as I say, with this one, more 1% to sort of 2% kind of range. And the current English cases are the West African strain, the less virulent strain. Now, as far as I understand, these have the same transmissibility, but this one's much more pathogenic. It makes people much sicker and greatly increases their risk of death. But we haven't got that one, so that's good. Transmission. Direct from the UK government site. There's a very low risk of transmission to the general population. We'll accept that. Does not spread easily between people. Yeah, although there is household spread. Household spread figures tend to vary between about 10 and 35% of people within a household who can become infected. So household spread and interpersonal spread are the ones that we'll be more concerned about. When someone is close contact with an infected person, people without symptoms are not considered infectious. So this is why this is so important, and this is not going to be a pandemic, because people without symptoms are not considered infectious. So the people with it can be readily isolated, and that is excellent. We're not going to get uncontrolled spread. Those who have been in close proximity are being contacted with the current UK outbreak. So the health authorities, who should be pretty well geared up, you would hope, after COVID contact tracing, although that wasn't particularly successful, largely due to the huge volume of people getting infected all at the same time. They should be all over this one. I'd be pretty disappointed if they weren't. Again, we're talking about transmission here. Now, that bit on transmission there was the UK official data. This is from the CDC in the States. It's a zoonotic infection, so animal to human definitely happens. African rodents, a particular type of, I don't know if it's exactly a monkey, but a few different animals, rodents, squirrels in Africa. Also, there is human-to-human transmission, can be through broken skin, can be through the respiratory tract and the mucous membranes. Now, mucous membranes, of course, leaves open the possibility of sexual spread, as well as eyes, nose, mouth. Direct contamination with body fluids or lesion material. So the lesion material is the pussy stuff out of the spots. Indirect contact with lesion material, such as contaminated bedding. Now, you've probably heard these stories of where people essentially used plague blankets as biological warfare in some of the early conflicts in the Americas. That there is truth to some of these stories, where contaminated blankets were given to indigenous people, and there were outbreaks of smallpox. But this is not smallpox, this is monkeypox. But it's transmitted in the same way, because they're both these type of, what did we say, orthopox virus. So it's very similar mode of transmission, but smallpox being more transmissible, but thankfully eradicated. Primarily means of transmission is through large respiratory droplets. So if we've followed the COVID stuff, you know this. When we breathe out large respiratory droplets, and we breathe out small aerosolized respiratory droplets. The aerosolized respiratory droplets can hang in the air for 3 hours in the case of COVID. These heavy ones just fall out quickly, so they don't float around in the air. So it's basically close contact, largely prolonged face-to-face contact, which of course would include intimate contact. Dr. Nicholas Price, Director, High Consequence Infectious Diseases Network, NHS Security Agency in the UK. All the links are there, check them out. Initial symptoms. Right, fever. The body temperature goes up. There is a fever with this condition. With a fever, you feel unwell. Typically, initially, when you're developing a fever, you feel cold as the body's trying to warm up. There may be shaking, and the body temperature goes up, and then you'll feel hot to the touch. The fever is the body's way of optimizing the body's own immune system to help it combat the virus. So fever is a perfectly natural response to viral or bacterial infection. Headache, of course, often goes with this. Muscle cramps and aches, more aches really, that can go with any viral infection. I remember once when I was developing flu, and of course millions of you will realise this from COVID, you just kind of feel achy all over. Backache, just achy, because you're developing this infection and the cytokine reaction to that. Backache, swollen lymph nodes, particularly in the neck, is reported with monkeypox, but presumably in other areas as well. The lymph nodes against the body's natural way of combating the infection. The lymph nodes swell. There's immune cells in the lymph nodes that are proliferating to help combat the infection. It's called lymphadenopathy, common in many infectious diseases, so not surprising there either. Chills, like you feel cold, so you have chills because you're developing a fever. And the patient just feels tired, wants to go to bed, which of course is the best possible thing you can do. When you have a viral infection, you should not be exercising, you should be resting. Again, this is the body telling you to take it easy. Rash is 1 to 5 days after first symptoms. So within the first few days of symptoms developing. Now this is after symptoms, not after initially getting the infection, after symptoms. So you'll feel ill, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days after that, the rash will develop. After that, a rash can develop, often beginning on the face, then spreading to other parts of the body. Tends to be the distribution. The rash changes and goes through different stages before finally forming a scab, which later falls off, exactly as we've just seen in this sequence of pictures about the individual spot here from the NHS Security Agency. Starting like that, becoming pussy, ending up as a dried scab. The rash changes and goes, yeah, we did that. Can look like chickenpox or syphilis. Now, chickenpox is a herpes zoster virus. It's completely different. Syphilis is a spirochete bacterial infection. Completely different. It's just that they can both give these. They can both give similar looking spots. That's why it's called chickenpox, and that's why syphilis used to be called the pox, because of these pussy rashes. Moving on. Starts as a raised spot, forming into fluid-filled blisters, can then scab and fall off. And this is called a vesicular rash. A vesicle is just a fluid-filled space, so a vesicular rash is one of these fluid-filled spots, is a vesicular rash because of the fluid in there. Pussy vesicular rash. Now, incubation period. Now, incubation period is the time from when someone is first exposed to the virus till they first get symptoms. Then following that, there'll be those few days, as we said, from first symptoms to developing the rash. So the order is initial infection, the virus will multiply in the body, first symptoms, then the rash is the way this works. Incubation period can be quite long. So from when someone's first exposed to the virus up until symptomatic day 1, 6 to 13 days, typically a week, slightly over a week is typical. Lesions can be very itchy and painful, particularly as they're getting better. They can be very itchy, even painful. So itchy lesions is a characteristic. And of course, if you're scratching around them, there's a risk you'll get further skin infections. It's very hard not to scratch these itchy things. Case fatality ratio, how many people die from this? Now, the West African clade, this is the viruses that are endemic in West Africa. Nigeria, for example, about 1%. The Congo Basin clade, it can be as high as 10%. And as we said, this is the more dangerous form. Same virus, but different. It's just evolved differently, presumably over many thousands of years. Who knows? Possibly over millions of years. These viruses viruses have been around basically as long as there's been other cells. Virus has been around, and bacterial cells probably go back. No one really knows. The earliest evidence for bacterial cells is probably the stromatolites in Western Australia, and we're talking about 3.5 billion years ago. Life on Earth is a great mystery, but I won't go into that now. But the viruses have probably been around for that amount of time. Where they came from, no one knows. I've asked every virologist I meet, I've met a few over the years, I say, right, where did viruses come from? And they'll give you some theories, but if they're being honest, if it's after a couple of pints in the pub, they'll say, I don't know, mate. Theories, but nothing conclusive on where viruses came from. Complete mystery. They seem to have just they seem to come with ecosystems. They were probably created with ecosystems. We simply don't have data on that. Now, children may be at higher risk. This is a concern. The children in a household may be at higher risk of getting severe disease and indeed of potentially dying. So this is a concern. This is actually the main reason I wanted to do this, because households should have a high index of suspicion. And if there's an infected case in the house, whatever you do, protect that infectious case from children in the house. Why do children get more severe disease? Probably because they don't have any cross immunity. So even although this particular type of virus is specific to, as we said, cowpox, smallpox and monkeypox, people won't have been exposed to those usually. But as you go through life, you're exposed to many other viruses and you'll get a degree of cross-infection, which often children don't have. I'm probably actually partly protected because I was vaccinated before we stopped smallpox vaccination in the UK, and smallpox vaccination confers some immunity against monkeypox, and we stopped smallpox vaccinations in the UK in 1971, I think, were the last ones. But even before then, in the late 60s, it was becoming less popular. But I was personally vaccinated against smallpox, so I presumably still have some degree, even all those decades later, of protection against monkeypox. But for young adults, they won't have that. And children, as I say, more of a concern. So obviously anyone with this would report it straight away, but with children in the house, be more careful. Also, pregnant women, be very careful around pregnant women. Monkeypox during pregnancy, there's a whole congenital means present at birth because it causes abnormal fetal development, congenital monkeypox, and various conditions that go with that, and in fact it can even cause an intrauterine death resulting in a stillbirth. So my main concern here actually is children and pregnant women and their unborn babies, which are the perhaps most vulnerable to this. Now there is a vaccine. I've never given it myself, but there is a vaccine. Traditional smallpox vaccine provides some protection, as we said, but there we go, written it down. We stopped vaccinating in 1971 for smallpox giving some degree of protection against monkeypox. Post-exposure prophylaxis with vaccine is being offered to high-risk contacts. Now this is interesting. So if people had contact with the disease, it seems in the incubation period, if you catch this early, and this is what we're doing in the UK according to the Health Security Agency. So if someone's infected with monkeypox and you give them the vaccine early, then they'll develop a level of immunity, even though it's only a few days, or as we say, just over a week typically before they become infectious, or before they become symptomatic rather. They will be infectious around about that time as well. But that gives a little bit of time to develop some immunity. So there is merit to post-exposure vaccination, which is interesting. There's not many conditions where we would do this, but post-exposure prophylaxis is currently being offered in the UK at the moment. Now, since 2017 in Nigeria, there's been 558 suspected cases. Now, of course, there have been way more than this. This is just what's reported all over Nigeria. 241 confirmed cases, 8 deaths from the confirmed cases, case fatality ratio of 3.3%. But of course, because there was lots of cases that wouldn't have been picked up, the case fatality ratio is going to be a bit lower, at least for this Nigerian strain. And the Telegraph did report that there seems to be a sexual link with this. 4 of 7 cases in England in the past 2 weeks, gay or bisexual men. If so, this is new. Is this a real factor? Probably not. It probably just reflects the preferences of the people that were first admitted. I think it's probably more of a founder effect. So there we go. That is what all this hype about monkeypox is about. Hopefully you won't see a case. I don't think there's going to be a widespread outbreak. But if you are, particularly if you do have travel links with Nigeria or Congo, have a high index of suspicion for this, particularly protecting children and pregnant women in the household. But interesting nonetheless. Great that we don't have smallpox anymore. We do get a few cases of cowpox. I've never seen it personally, but apparently the most transmission is from cats now, as we've said. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of syphilis now either. Syphilis, of course, used to be really common. I mean, when I was a student psychiatric nurse between 1975 and 1978, then we had lots of patients in with a condition called general paralysis of the insane, appalling term now, but these were people that had cerebral syphilis. So primary syphilis is the chancre at the site of infection. Secondary syphilis is often a rash, this vesicular type of rash, which is where the name comes from, the pox, because it's a pocky type of rash. But then that can go away and people can develop tertiary syphilis, which can affect the heart and the central nervous system. And that caused a type of dementia, often characterised by grandiose delusions. And very often there was an abnormal gait as the syphilis affected the nervous system. What happened actually was there was lots of people with syphilis. And then about 1950, widespread antibiotic treatment became available for syphilis. And that got rid of the infection, but it couldn't undo the damage that was already done. So there was kind of a generation that had to live out their lives with the damage caused by syphilis. But as we said, syphilis is a bacterial infection. It's a spirochete. This is a viral infection. It's different. It's just that it gives a similar sort of rash, but completely different disease with a completely different treatment. And of course, the great thing about syphilis these days is it's a bacterial infection, and we can treat it readily. We can treat bacterial infections. There are bacterial-resistant forms of various diseases, but by and large, we can often have a good go at treating bacterial infections, certainly syphilis, but viral infections, DNA viruses such as such as monkeypox, we can't give any direct causal treatment. I didn't mean to go on about syphilis there, so if you've stayed till the end, that's fine. But remember, syphilis and monkeypox, two completely separate diseases. It's like chickenpox, completely separate disease, just that it gives the pustular rash. That's the only commonality. So how's this going to go? There could be more cases of monkeypox in the UK. I expect there will be. Is it going to become a big outbreak? I really don't think so. What would concern me, though, is if it did get into any animal reservoir in Western countries. That would be a concern. So the reason that this disease keeps popping up in Nigeria and Congo is contact with animals. Often animals, wild animals killed for food. It would concern me, for example, if this virus got into cattle, domestic cats, rats, mice, squirrels in Western countries, in England, for example. That's not impossible, and that would become a concern because then it would be endemic in an animal reservoir. But we're not there yet. But we'll keep an eye on it. It's an interesting story, and don't worry too much about it. But hope that was interesting. Thank you for watching.